It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hey friends, this is Andy. This episode of Accelerate is brought to you by KiteDesk. KiteDesk is the all-in-one sales development platform that lets you manage all of your sales development activities, such as email, direct dial phone calls, and your daily to-dos, all in one place to open up conversations, book more qualified meetings, and really create a predictable pipeline.
KiteDesk Flow and KiteDesk Find allows us to find exactly the right people in the industries we're looking for, in the roles that we're looking for.
That's KiteDesk customer Michael Orphis. Michael is head of sales at Stratified. In addition to the all-in-one management of his sales development team's days, KiteDesk helps him with another big part of his job.
We have the ability with KiteDesk to do what we call targeted campaigns. Our conversion rate from what we were doing in the past to what we're doing now has been really massive.
So you don't have to take tons of time to research, prospect, then blast large lists of people that never turn into sales opportunities.
We're seeing higher clicks, we're seeing higher open rates, and without question, we've seen a massive increase in pipeline generation.
So, to learn more about KiteDesk, schedule a free demo, and learn how to create predictable pipeline at your sales organization, go to kitedesk.com/accelerate. That's KITEDESK.com/accelerate. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. Joining me on the show today is Peter Buscemi. He's the founder of Four Quadrant, LLC, and he serves as an advisor and educator to Fortune 1000 companies and startups, provides a lot of great go-to-market resources. We're going to talk about some of those today. Peter, welcome to Accelerate.
Thank you very much for having me, Andy.
Oh, my pleasure. So take a minute to introduce yourself beyond that bare-bones sketch I gave people. Maybe tell us how you got started in business even.
Sure. A lifelong marketer. I went to school on the East Coast at Bentley, and while I was there, I was able to work with DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation.
Yeah.
If the oldies will remember that. Fell into a marketing role.
Ken Olson. I always remember Ken Olson because I knew DEC. I had worked in the computer business, the mainframe business before joining Apple, relatively early days in Apple, and I always remember I had this newspaper clipping from Ken Olson in which he said, basically derided PCs. They'll never last. This is a fad. They're going to go away. Who needs those things?
That's right about when I left. Yeah, it was great because I was able to work while I went through school, and then they offered me a job after the fact when I graduated. Next thing you know, 35 years later, here I am, and it was great because DEC was a very well-established company, and had the opportunity to work with some really great people at that particular point in time. But those first 15 years of my career, I spent at DEC, HP, Apple, Oracle, and Business Objects. So, really with classically trained managers, that had been in the company, for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes, especially at HP, I was able to get that classical training background and from people that had been in business for quite some time, which, always isn't the case today. But after 15 years of that, you can imagine, or some people, there's a fork in the road, and you either choose to do that corporate life or not. And it was about 1999 I started to do startups. So I ran marketing for 3 startups. And one of the board members there had a boutique VC out of New York, Kevin Kimberlin, Spencer Trask, and I went and worked and advised portfolio companies for Kevin for a few years. And after that, it just sort of was a natural path for me to advise companies on my own. And so that's what I have done for a long time. And typically those roles are interim gigs. So I'll be the interim CMO or VP of marketing or VP of field marketing or whatever it might be after a company has let somebody go. Or a lot of times now is what happens is in the companies I work with pretty much are 10 million in revenue to 150 million in revenue, they'll separate the corporate marketing function and the field marketing or market development or sales development function. Report it to the sales guy. So the head of sales basically says, "Hey, look, I want control of my resources to create the pipeline and sales enablement tools that I want, and then I'll come in and create that function for them, get it up and running, and then we'll backfill somebody, and then I'll move on to the next role."
Well, it raises an interesting question, is because this is one you're seeing more debate about, certainly in the Valley, and I know in other companies, is where is that dividing line between sales and marketing? Where do the SDRs, this inside sales development role, where does it really fit? And what's your take on that? I think you come from a marketing standpoint. To me, I'll tell you my take. I think they could belong in marketing just as well as sales. I mean, it is fundamentally a marketing process as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I go back to basically there's a triangle. Marketing, what do? You don't make, sell, or fix anything. It was I was irritated and motivated by Packard's comment. Way back when in the 80s, he basically said marketing is much too important to leave to marketers.
Who was that again that said that?
David Packard.
Oh, David Packard said that. Okay.
Yeah, so there's actually some truth to it, but there's some motivation. So I said, basically, okay, what does marketing do? Well, I think you really can do three things. You either build or maintain the brand, you help build better products, or you help sell. And you can do all three of those, but it depends really the mentality of the company you're working for. I've always found it more fun to work with salespeople and to help sell. And, at the end of the day, I think that portion of marketing, which is typically demand creation, field marketing, and you brought up an interesting point in terms of, sales development reps or BDRs, business development reps, where do they actually sit? And that function, it's basically, if marketing didn't exist, you'd have salespeople, and there'd be fewer salespeople that would actually make the number. But, spending 35 years in this world, the best salespeople are just phenomenal. They're incredible, and they figure out how to, identify their target market and, identify those particular companies, those particular prospects. They figure out how to craft messaging. They figure out how to do their lead gen. They figure out how to do their conversion, and yada, yada, yada. And that's good. The only issue is they're way too expensive, especially a direct sales organization, because, back of the napkin kind of numbers are a fully loaded direct salesperson is about $350K. At a minimum, it's 120. Yeah, the numbers. 250 base and bonus. 50
right.
T&E, 50 benefits, 200 business days. You're talking about $1,800 a day. And so then the question comes up is, do you want a sales rep who's got to get a certain number of deals, per month, per year, or quarter per year, focused on these particular activities? And, the good answer should be no. I mean, if you've got one sales rep and this is it, that's one thing. But if you're trying to build a scalable model, no, you want to, segment, and you want to carve out those tasks to, an expert, so that there's one person that can spend the vast majority of their time on each one of those particular tasks, and they can optimize it and a lot of times automate it. So, back to your original question, I think that is one process, and we call it the sales process. I always tag a little piece on the front of it, and I call it the marketing and sales funnel, because there are some tasks that are at the top of the funnel, but if they're not focused on what a best practice, best in class direct salesperson would do, they don't belong there. So marketers that think that, if I create a lead or a marketing qualified lead, and I turn around and I go back and I do that again, that's not what I would call integrated sales or marketing. And I would push away from that. And I see salespeople push away from that because it's not integrated on the final goal of create me an opportunity that has a high propensity to close. Mm-hmm. Those are two really, really different concepts.
Well, and this is sort of topic du jour, certainly in large parts of Silicon Valley, is this whole idea of sales and marketing alignment, right?
Yes.
Given this development over the last 10 years of this new inside sales model being driven largely by the emerging SaaS business model is, how do we make these two work together even better than they have in the past, or at all compared to the way they have in the past? And you see, lots of books and lots of articles being written. And
but I think
it seems like it should be fairly easy to achieve, and you sound like you've had the experience of helping that alignment, but I'm sure you've seen it both ways.
Oh, I've got some scars. We originally created, and I say we, at Oracle in the 90s, I go back to this because I believe it was really the right conceptual fit. I mean, the concepts have been somewhat bastardized over the years, and there were a couple of really key people, Kate Mitchell and Lori Myrick, just two phenomenal people that were at Oracle. And I was fortunate to be part of this, where we actually created America's marketing model, which was field marketing. But the difference is you have all the executional pieces, which everyone has today, whether you're doing emails or marketing automation or events or whatever, webinars, all that stuff, your website, great. Those are executional pieces. But there were two core pieces. One was a plug back into the development organization, understand what are they building and why are they building that, and what's the right message, and what's the business outcome, and what's the unique differentiation, and what's the value driver to the audience that is responsible for the buying process. So a lot of people don't do that, or they do that through product marketing or whatever, but it's never really tied to, demand gen, demand creation. Right. And the other piece is to have a planning function that's connected back into the sales organization. So it's not, at a rep level, hey, make sure we get an event in, this hotel on this date, and make sure there's enough donuts and coffee. It's, okay, what's your number and how are we going to make it? Is that, expansion revenue? Is that, what's the annual contract value going to be? What are we thinking about a churn? Do you have hunters? Do you have farmers? Is your geographic makeup really spread out like in the Southeast, or is it like Manhattan where, someone's going to have a couple of blocks? Do you have strategic accounts? Is it opportunistic based? And then from there, really building a plan to say, okay, that it's going to make sense top down where you're going to exceed your number, but bottom up, from a rep point of view, you're going to have, a plan that makes sense. So it cascades from the top down. And those are the pieces that people miss. They miss the part of, I really have to be integrated with the salesperson, because if that salesperson's not calling you on, the weekend or at night, and you're not on his speed dial, you're really an event planner. And event planners are fine.
You're not marketing, you're an event planning at that point. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, you need events. Don't get me wrong, and events are good, but an event is not really where a salesperson is going to go, okay, I got a partner that's going to help me make my number, and I'm going to look for them to create 25 or 35 or 50% of my opportunities, and I know that this person's going to do it. Those are really different things.
Right, which I think is such a key concept you brought up, because this is something I wrote an article about a year or so ago that occasioned some comment that I got, is that people, this whole idea, I called it a lead deficit, but how does sales reps can't go into a year without understanding what they're going to get from marketing and what they're going to generate themselves?
I would argue that, it and it's hard, especially with the sales team, but when you actually sit down, it's really a year and a half in advance. Because if you've got, a sales cycle that's, from qualified sales opportunity to close, if that's, 6 months or whatever, the time to get, an MQL to a QSO is going to be whatever, 3 months, and then the time to actually plan that campaign. So, and that's what I tell people today. I said, if we start today, we're going to really impact, the middle of next year. I mean, there's some quick hits that you can do that are going to force fit, some opportunities, finding some bluebirds that are going to close in the next 90 days. Sure. Is that going to be really expensive and time consuming? Sure. And is that a sustainable long-term solution? No.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I found fascinating about a lot of the content you have available on your website. And I urge people to check it out. And Peter will tell us later how to do that. is you've mapped out a lot of these processes, these planning processes. You sort of templatized it. It really sort of classic marketing process to some degree, as you talked about, but still so relevant for anybody who wants to go to market or implement a new initiative or something. Is too often you see, especially startups, this is a brave new world. We're just going to go figure it out as we go. And boy, you can spend a lot of money that you don't necessarily have by being unmethodical as opposed to being methodical. And you provide a great sort of avenue to be methodical.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, I fell into the space and I just loved it, and I just want to continue doing this. And but I think there were a couple of things. One is, when I went to Spencer Trask, this was in 2005. It's pretty common now. I mean, if you look across all the VCs and whatever, they've got incubators, or they call them accelerators now, whatever, which is classic. I mean, that is great. But in 2005, that's what I was doing with Spencer Trask. I've looked at 15 companies, and the issue was, you don't have a background in bio or pharma or, manufacturing or this or that. And I said, you know what? I said, I'd argue that any company, any size, you basically there's really 10 basic marketing problems you have, and they never really change. They change in scale and complexity, but they're all the same. And then I started to really focus on what these issues were, basic messaging and positioning and customer acquisition and retention and, sales. And they're all the same problems. And so what I started to do was to formalize it. And, I'm more of an analytical driver. And that's what I started to do at Spencer Trask. And then, so I had these, predefined go-to-market processes. And then I started to teach at the executive MBA level at the University of San Francisco. And, this is, 40, 50-year-old people, there's 20 or 30 of them that show up, and, you're trying to teach them marketing in, 13 weeks at an accelerated pace. So I really had to hone what I would do. And what I did was I broke these, tasks down into, about 10 processes. And then I tried to say, okay, if I was going to go in and work with a client on this, what would I start? What would my shell be? And then I walked, the MBA students through this. And then these are the things that I actually use in my consulting engagements today. And so I've got some things that, there's a minimal cost to them, but they're, beautifully designed, professional PowerPoint templates that will show you.
I mean, I would say if you were a marketing or sales consultant and you want to use it with your own clients, I'd go pay $199 and do it and download them, because you look very smart to your clients all of a sudden.
Yeah, and the goal is not to make money on that. We just want to be able to just make more of them for people. But what we try to do is we try to provide a lot of free things too for people, and then we'll put 3 or 4 blog posts up each month, and those are usually questions that I hear that I want to formulate the answer to in my head, or I've just heard it 2 or 3 times in the course of a month, and I'm like, oh my God, if this is a problem for me, it's got to be a problem for other people. So I want to share that information out there. And then I just started now. It's like there's a lot of research out there, numbers and so forth from Gartner, IDC, and Forrester, and then there's always some wonderful charts that I see. So I tried to start to pull those together for people, so that when you're under the gun, under pressure, you don't have to go spend half a day on Google and try to figure out how to optimize their page to show up on the first page and results and what have you.
So I really like your sales marketing quick reference card. I think it's a really useful tool. So tell people what that is.
Yes, the quick reference card is basically a one-page document to help put sales and marketing on one page. The idea was to provide
shocking idea, by the way.
It's funny, you go around the organization and you ask everybody what the company does, and you get a lot of different responses. And so that's the catalyst really for this document. And it really wanted to be, the format was supposed to be one page, so that, a sales development rep, business development rep can have it in front of them as they're making phone calls, or receiving inbound calls. And the idea is that there's a positioning statement that's a sentence or two that somebody can say, okay, this is what our company actually does. And
that's relevant to the customers you're calling on.
Exactly. And it's not supposed to be, a jargon riddled kind of a thing. It's basically just supposed to be, what do we do kind of a thing. And the next piece that it's supposed to help the SDR is to identify, the specific use cases. So we're going to try to identify what those opportunity areas are that our solution would be a good fit for. And again, it's a high level kind of a thing, but it's trying to help the SDR bring up something that's relevant, so it will be engaging for the prospect to have a conversation.
Well, and I think as I looked at the document, though, and interrupt for a second, is the especially given sort of the emerging account-based, strategy, account-based everything, model that people are embracing, is you really can almost have one of these it could be by vertical markets you're attacking, yes, or range of specific target accounts. So as you get into defining specific opportunity areas, it's really for that type of business that you're selling to, this particular type of prospect.
Exactly. That is ideal. You can make one for the company, but industry specific is really good. And then you can split a couple of different ways. One, you can split by audience, whether it's technical or non-technical. And then you could split again, whether it's strategic or operational. Mm-hmm. So a lot of clients I work with, we're able to get the first level down to the industry level. And so that's good. But if you can take it down further, because all it's going to do is, it's making for a meaningful, relevant conversation. And everyone gets those calls. Hi, how are you doing today, Andy? Click. And you've got to get past that. And there's the only way you can get past that is, being meaningful and relevant. So having that quick synopsis of what the company does is great, but then also identifying those opportunity areas about, those use cases about, are you doing this? Are you, frustrated with that? Is this, yada, 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 is very important, as well as identifying the titles of the people that you should be having a conversation with, those in the buying process, whether it's VP level and above, mm-hmm, or director, manager, individual contributor. So it's a great reminder because the SDR, BDR, they're doing a bunch of things, right? They're making outbound calls, taking inbound calls, they're updating Salesforce, they're doing this, they're researching accounts, they're on LinkedIn, whatever. So typically, these people are a little bit younger and, haven't been around as long. So it's great to give them tools, and discovery questions are great tool. And these are questions that, the salesperson would ask, in the beginning cycle of a sales cycle. So, and it should be maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 questions tops that should be provided so the SDR can use those in a conversation. Again, not trying to read a script, but referencing some material that might be topical for them.
Well, and I think also really important in this section is those discovery questions is to have a couple I call killer questions, which are sort of the aha questions. Because it's great learning experiences for the reps to start getting experience answering those types of questions, and then understanding and developing a aptitude for asking a good second question that's not necessarily on that form, that follows up that good first question. But it all starts with good first questions. And too many companies leave the reps sort of on their own to sort of come up with these good questions, and they're corporate assets. So put it out there so people can learn from it.
It really is. And there's a couple of things that I like to do ahead of this. One is, when you're doing your sizing kind of document, you've discovered your total addressable market and your served market and your target market. You come up with this target account profile of, what does the ideal prospect look like? And you create as much criteria as you possibly can. And then the second piece is, a qualification matrix. So if you looked at a salesperson and you said, okay, great, give me the profile and the response of some questions that would, give me 90% probability that you'd be able to close them. Would they be in this industry? Would they have that kind of revenue? Would they have this kind of a problem? And those qualification matrix questions, hopefully there's only 5 or 10 of them, but those are the type of questions you want to sort of pull back into your discovery questions. But also, if there's a potential gotcha, you want to use that as your, frequently asked questions, your objection handling. Mm-hmm. So if there's something you need to diffuse, Don't hide it under the rug. Bring it up and come up with a good response. And, the wonderful thing is, or not, maybe not so wonderful for me because I'm a consultant, is that this will all change, right? I mean, you've got competitors coming in and out, and people will adapt to messaging and functionality, whatever, over 3-6 months. So this is going to have to be a bi-directional document where, the sales development person on the phone that's pitching this stuff is going to have to come back weekly, monthly, back to the lead gen, back to their direct salesperson or inside salesperson they're supporting, saying, hey, look it, dog's not eating it. This isn't working, or I'm finding tremendous success with this, or, we found another use case, or whatever it might be. So it's, it's meant to put people on the same page, but what it does, or when it's most effective, is it becomes this conduit for information to be fed back into the process, because you might want to, change your lead gen program, relative to this, or you might actually identify, a new niche market or a sub-segment of a market, that is receptive to this that wasn't, on the target list.
Well, yeah, and I think that, to me, one of the real values of this, and we sort of skirted around this before, is it's a learning document, for almost everybody in the company. I think that, we're putting down one page what we do. Anybody can read this and be able to talk knowledgeably about what we do and ask the right questions of a potential prospect. And that has so much value. That you have a common thing that everybody can reference, a common reference everybody can refer to, is that, because right now, gosh, you get marketing message put out and sales changes it and turns into sales messaging and so on. And I think this is, you laugh because you've seen that happen, right? So just common document. You put in the stories, you put in your value statements, your common value statements, value that you deliver. I said sales stories, ask the great questions, objection handling. And objections, I like the fact you include that, because I don't really call them objections at that stage. I think they're, as you said, frequently asked questions, but they prevent continuity. And so, if they're not answered appropriately, then the thing's not going to move forward. So having those down is again really important for your SDRs, BDRs. They may not use them verbatim. You don't want them necessarily use them verbatim, but they understand the context.
No, it's a great thing, and I think you made a wonderful point. A lot of times, the first call is into an 800 number, an operator, or the receptionist, or whatever it might be, and that person needs to get that information as well. And then you could extend it to onboarding, customer support. So that's where we sometimes forget, because in a SaaS world, it's all about onboarding that customer and making sure that they're successful and thinking them through. So we've used this type of template all across the organization, whether it's for this SDRs or marketing campaigns, or for customer support or whatever. But I think you made a real key in terms of messaging. People get confused, and we talked about this really in the first couple of minutes here in terms of what does marketing do? There's build a brand, maintain it, make a product, or sell, and that building a brand and maintaining it is really, the classic messaging and positioning. Classic messaging and positioning is wonderful, for the analyst and to relatively position yourself in a marketplace relative to a competitor. But as you said, and I find all too often, and I'm sure you do as well, is that, you hand over that corporate messaging, that's going into press releases as the boilerplate and so on and so forth. And it's needed and it must be there. But those aren't the sales messages. Those aren't the conversations that salespeople are going to have with people that are in the buying process. Now, those sales messages all have to align with that, corporate messaging and positioning. But so many times I see, that's broken, and that doesn't translate down to sales messages. And, if there's a great product marketing team in place, or a lot of times they know that part of their job is to provide that content for those messaging programs. But if you don't have somebody that has that mentality, or you've got someone that's not skilled in that area, it's really a waste, because you've got someone who's running lead gen or demand creation, as I call it, that's really empty. They're hollow, because they don't know what to communicate. And then that's when you've got this, finger pointing back and forth, sales is saying the marketing team doesn't do anything, or they're creating, opportunity that doesn't have any knowledge or interest in our particular solution, and so on and so forth. So it's really those sales messages that the sales team cares about, at least from building a pipeline point of view.
So last question on this sales marketing quick references: who owns it? Who has ownership of creating and marketing?
What I always say is, it's really consensus. Marketing needs to drive it, because it's just that way.
Mm-hmm.
But what I always say is, the marketing team tries to sort of bring that framework and, adhere to that, corporate messaging and positioning and what have you. So they own that. And they also have an arm into the demand creation piece. So they got to create the programs. And sometimes, as we said earlier, depends where demand management is, those SDRs and BDRs. And so it's multiple functions within marketing. But then also the sales team, because it's like, okay, it has to be believable, it has to be real, I have to know it. And as well, the product marketing, product management team, because it has to be true. So what I say is it's really those three functions. It's sales, marketing, and the development team that really have to come together and validate it. But marketing has to drive it.
Okay. Peter, now we get to the last segment of the show. I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests. And first one, you sort of get to step outside and take off your marketing hat and put your sales hat on. And this is a hypothetical scenario that I've now asked about 400 people. And it is, in the scenario, you've just been hired as a VP of sales at a company whose sales have stalled out. CEO and the board are anxious to hit the reset button, get things back on track. What two things would you do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
I think the first thing that I like to do is I like to go back to point A, and just sort of do a reset and sort of understand where you actually are. And those are all the basic things. It's like, that the specific market that we're focused on, mm-hmm. the specific use cases, the differentiation, the value drivers, the buying process. And, if all of those things line up, then we can start talking about some other things. And but a lot of times it's, maybe you want to be in the industry, you want to be in life sciences, but if you really don't have a specific use case that you can solve for, where your solution has unique differentiation, and you can have value-driven conversations with the various people in the buying process that communicates economic value to their organization and why they should act now, it doesn't matter, because typically what happens is, right, I mean, you just go, okay, what guy is less than 80% of the number? Okay, fire them. Okay, let's hire some new guys. Let's go spend some more money on some lead gen. We need more leads. And it's like, okay, wait a second. Let's make sure we've got the guns focused in the right direction. I think then after that, now it's sort of that sales process in terms of, have you nail it, scale it, right? A lot of people like to scale it before they nailed it, and it's like if you're hiring salespeople and giving them the yellow pages and the white pages and saying, okay, great, call me. That does nobody good. So until you have a proven onboarding process, and I always have this discussion with folks. Not sure where you stand on, Andy. I got a feeling I know where you do, but my thought is, with a new rep, you're scaling them at whatever, 25%, 50%, 75% over 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Mm-hmm. So in that first 3 months, how much time are you investing in them? And some companies go, oh, we do a lot. We bring them out to corporate for a week or 2 weeks. And I said, okay, well, what does that training situation look like? Oh, well, we have them here for a week. And, when you look at it, this poor person has, 8 sessions a day for 5 days and 60 PowerPoints in each session. And they saw, 5,000 PowerPoints, and they heard, whatever it was, 40 different speakers over 4 days or 5 days. It's impossible.
Yeah,
it's
they
impossible
don't remember a thing.
No, and then they go back, and a lot of them are home based or whatever, and it's like, well, guys, wait a second. Why don't you go way deeper on one topic, and over the course of whatever it is, that first 3 months or 6 months, build that. So if I come out here, we're going to focus on one set of products, or we're going to focus on the sales process, and the deal. It's like, we're going to talk about product. We're going to talk about your quota. We're going to talk about sales for the sales automation system. We're going to talk about it. And it's like, there's no way you can do it. So, I think less is more. Mm-hmm. So I'd say is go back to just your go-to-market fundamentals. Make sure that you really have something. You're focused the guns in the right place. That if you got an opportunity that met this criteria, yes, you're going to close it. Then look at the sales process. Then I think that's when and ideally you've engaged with marketing. People don't like to hear it, but ahead of time, because you want marketing to sort of soften the earth. You don't want a sales guide to have to spend a lot of time and effort doing these basic fundamental things, because they're just too expensive to do it. So. That's my short answer.
No, that's good. It probably wouldn't surprise you that only those guests that have really a marketing orientation include coordinating with marketing in their answer. So, FYI. So there's the symptom and the problem right there. Okay, I got 4 sort of rapid fire questions. You could be one-word answers, or you can elaborate if you wish to end up the show. So the first one is, when you, Peter, are out selling your services, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
Just people I work with. I mean, I get referenced in, and it's usually by salespeople.
Okay, who's your sales role model?
My sales role model, I'd have to go back to the people at Oracle. I mean, in the 90s, they were just phenomenal. It was George Roberts in the Central, Ron Branch in the East, and Joanne Evans in the West. I mean, those people were just classic.
Excellent. One book every salesperson should read.
Oh man, I'm looking at a wall of books. One that I always go back to. It's an oldie, but it's really good. It's called Marketing Plans by Malcolm McDonald.
Okay.
Marketing
Plans, Malcolm McDonald. Okay, good.
It's an oldie, but a goodie.
All right. Well, I think it's the first time it's been mentioned, but it'll definitely go on the list. And last one, tough question today: what music's on your playlist these days?
So funny, because I just went in the garage and my wife told me I had to throw it out or use it. And so I just brought up a Marantz receiver, a Thorns turntable, my old Definitive 2-column speakers. And the first album I grabbed, vinyl, is Neil Young and Crazy Horse, live in San Francisco.
Oh, great album. Great album. Okay. Yeah, I could listen to that all day long too. That's great. Well, good. Well, Peter, thank you for joining me today. Tell folks how they can find out more about you or connect with you.
Sure. It's I run a website called Four Quadrant, FOURQUADRANT.com, which is dedicated to providing go-to-market resources for sales and marketing professionals, where you can email me at peter@fourquadrant.com.
Excellent. Yeah, people definitely check out the website. Great tools there, especially if you're concerned with any of the things that we've talked about today. Great resources. So again, thank you, Peter. And remember, friends, thank you for spending part of your day with me, and make it part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And an easy way to do that is take a minute, subscribe to this podcast, Accelerate. And that way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Peter Buscemi, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.